Hey, e-commerce Fastlane listeners, the holiday season is just around the corner, and now is the perfect time to level up your inventory planning. Now, you can join our 7-day inventory planning bootcamp and learn how to keep your stock optimized, your costs down, and your profits soaring, all just in 1 week. Now, each day you'll receive a quick, actionable email packed with expert tips and strategies to help you avoid stockouts, reduce excess inventory, and drive more sales. Now, it's designed to be simple and efficient. Now, each lesson takes less time than it is to finish your morning coffee. Now, during the bootcamp, you're going to gain valuable insights on assessing and analyzing your inventory performance, intelligent demand forecasting, strategies to reduce your excess stock, ordering inventory on a budget, evaluating technology solutions to inventory planning and management, and implementing a continuous improvement mindset. Now, are you ready to ensure that your store is stocked and prepared for the holidays? This bootcamp will equip you with the essential skills to set appropriate stock levels, to improve demand forecasting, and optimize your inventory management practices. You'll learn how to prevent cash from being tied up in excess stock while avoiding costly stockouts that can frustrate customers and impact your bottom line. Now, don't let the holiday rush catch you off guard. Take control of your inventory and set yourself up for success for a smooth and more profitable season. Now, this bootcamp is perfect for e-commerce entrepreneurs, especially those that are powered by Shopify who want to maximize their holiday sales potential while minimizing their inventory-related headaches. Now, you can sign up now at ecommercefastlane.com/inventory-planning, and you can start your journey to smarter inventory management today. Now, don't miss this opportunity to transform your inventory planning before the holiday rush.
You're listening to eCommerce Fastlane, the podcast show to help you build, manage, grow, and scale a successful and thriving company, powered by Shopify. Listen to real conversations with partners and subject matter experts as they share proven practical strategies, platforms, and the best Shopify apps to help you accelerate your business. The time is now for you to improve efficiencies, grow revenue, profit, and lifetime customer loyalty. Please welcome your host, startup founder, and strategic advisor, Steve Hutt.
Welcome back to another episode of eCommerce Fastlane. I'm your host, Steve Hutt, and today my guest, this is a really exciting guest today because this technology, before I intro this guest, this technology I've been recommending for all my years at Shopify. I've been a merchant success manager for 6.5 years, from 2018 all the way through. And this particular technology I've been recommending because I feel that some of the baked in feature of Shopify in the checkout, I believe they connect to Google's kind of engine of address verification. And I'm finding that in partnership with Shopify Payments and Stripe, I think in the end, I've always recommended this particular technology because I feel that they have a whole nother level of baked in kind of functionality that really improves the customer experience and deliverability, more enhanced than what Google is offering for address verification. So it's pretty exciting. So my guest is Alex Bryan, and he's the customer success manager at this company called Loqate. It's Loqate.com, Loqate.com. And what Alex does is really, he helps businesses use this kind of smart technology really to, as I mentioned, ensure that customers' addresses are correct. He's been involved in the industry for almost 2 decades. He has a ton of experience. At the end of the day, Loqate is a company that I know is very powerful. They work with all stages of businesses, early stage, mid-market, and through to enterprise. I mean, some big names like, ASOS and Kohl's and Sephora, and hundreds of Shopify-powered brands are using Loqate and their suite of tools. And we're going to talk more about the address verification kind of part of their business, which is the Loqate brand. But Alex, welcome to eCommerce Fastlane.
Thanks, Steve, and thank you very much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, and one thing that's great, thank you. I know you're in the UK right now, and I appreciate the flexibility of recording now. It's evening time for you and mid-morning for me, and I appreciate, where there's talent and some great product, I want to make sure I get people on the show, and I appreciate your flexibility today. So I want to dig into a little bit about you personally. I would like to understand what initially kind of drew you to kind of this, I'm going to call it location intelligence kind of field, but like it just, you have quite a bit of experience. I kind of creeped on your LinkedIn profile before recording today. So can you tell us a little bit about your experience leading up to your current role now at Loqate?
Sure. So let me take you back in time then to when I was at university. Okay. I studied classics as my bachelor degree, which is all about ancient history. And then I did a master's degree in computer science, which couldn't be, any much different, really. So, two polar opposites.
Yep.
But in 2007, I joined a little plucky startup business based in Worcester in the UK called Postcode Anywhere. And it was a great time, actually, to join the tech industry, because September 2007, the iPhone had just launched in America. It hadn't quite launched in the UK. So it was, and as we know now, that was a fundamental change to the way that we interact with the internet.
Right.
And so throughout my career, I've kind of done that in parallel with the growth of mobile commerce. And it's been a fascinating industry to work in. Location intelligence is such an interesting industry because everybody has a location, and a location is very important. It's part of your identity. I just find it absolutely fascinating talking to companies about the challenges and what they're trying to achieve through location intelligence and how they go about the challenge of reaching their customers.
And now this PCA Predict, this was the original company that you were involved with?
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it's still the same. So we were Postcode Anywhere when we first started,
right,
which then became PCA Predict as we sort of evolved the business and evolved the capabilities of what we could do, which was then acquired by GBG and is now Loqate. So I've actually just been in this business for 17 years, but I love it. I can't get enough of it.
Yeah. Oh, this is great. So I guess you would be a great person to ask the question around just the evolution of this address verification technology as it relates to e-commerce. We know there's been massive growth, and because of that, and I think of all these porch pirates, I think of all these undeliverable packages, I think about the customer experience that goes along with the whole checkout flow. And so can you talk a little bit about what has changed over the years from your lens, from how things maybe used to be in the early days with, Postcode Anywhere, and then moving now through to, I think it's AI powered now through Loqate. So I'd just love to hear the evolution.
Yeah, so I'd say the biggest change, the biggest evolution has been around the user experience. When I joined the industry in 2007, our tool was a postcode lookup. You type in a postcode or a zip code and click a button and you get a list of addresses back. And, in the UK, that's absolutely fine because a postcode covers about 15 to 30 addresses on average. So the user journey there is, it's pretty quick. The problem we started to see as our customers grew internationally and we started talking to more and more international customers as well, was that isn't the same story in every country. In Germany, a zip code covers thousands and thousands of addresses, the same in America. Some countries don't even have postcodes.
Right.
So that tool that we first created that allowed you to find your address from your postcode was great in some countries, wasn't great in others. The way that we evolved our product was to move into what we call capture, which, at the time we launched it in 2012, was pretty cutting edge. And this allowed you to get through to any address with as few keystrokes as a postcode, but by searching from any part. Search from the first line of the address, search from the town. It's super, super flexible. And this opened up the tool and the technology to a much wider international audience, because all of a sudden you could be sitting in Germany and you could find your address just as quickly as you could in the UK typing in a postcode. So that was sort of the first big change. But then as you start going into a wider audience, the challenges come from the availability of quality address data, because again, not every country is equal. Some countries have really, really easy to access and very good quality address data.
Right.
Others don't at all. And you'd be surprised, even, lots of European countries still don't have a single really good source of address data. So the challenge then is, how do you get a granular experience, a granular address data experience in every country in the world? And that's sort of where we're taking things to the next level, is that work that we're doing on making sure that we can reach as many people in the world as possible through our address lookup tool.
Yeah, it's amazing. I know I used to live in Barbados, and I think a lot of Caribbean countries, which I find quite interesting, is that they don't have any numbers at all on their houses or chattels or whatever you want to call them. And some are villas, but they have names to them. You know, that they would be in kind of a geographical kind of physical location. So it could be St. Peter and then it's Turtle House. And so that is like physically the address. So it's so interesting. And so you're suggesting that like even as obscure as that is, saying I live in St. Peter's, Barbados, Turtle House, for some reason, like that is the technical address in Barbados, and the delivery services that are there. UPS is there, DHL is there. I know I live there, so I know that they definitely come around, but they somehow are able to kind of get these packages to the right place. But then you wonder if they actually get to the right place.
Well, exactly. And that's where the location intelligence piece comes, because the address now alone isn't enough. So we can give coordinate data. You'll have heard of things like what 3 words. There are sort of lots of different tools coming on the market that are trying to make location simpler. And we work with many of those, but we also have our own, the data intelligence that we package around an address, and the geolocation of that person helps to really pinpoint where they are in the world. And that makes the delivery much, much easier. But it's still a challenge. There's still lots of countries that we call hard to address, where we're still working through what's actually the best way of delivering to these people, and skilling ourselves up on that sort of local knowledge, because almost every country has a different format of address.
100%. So most people that are listening today are likely with a Shopify powered brand, and I'd argue a little bit that with Shopify payments, and I think that's powered by Stripe, is kind of more their business partner, their banking partner. And I believe there are for sure some kind of autocomplete through Google as part or baked into the Shopify kind of checkout flow. And so can you talk a little bit about maybe the differences or how Loqate kind of enhances the customer experience or the fraud reduction or the deliverability? I mean, some of the things you've kind of alluded to, but I just want to kind of directly kind of contrast and compare and saying, yes, 5 million brands choose Shopify, to put their online store in there, and they trust in, Shopify's checkout flow, and it just kind of is what it is. There's been not really a lot of thought about it, but today's podcast really is there to educate people that no, I think you need to think about it, and here's why. And so I'll pass the torch to you and saying, like, what are the differences between baked in Shopify checkout and then those that have made the decision to use Loqate instead?
Sure, absolutely. So if you think about a checkout, there's 3 really important things that you're trying to achieve. One is you want your customers to be able to get through that checkout as quickly as possible, right? The best checkout is kind of no checkout, really, isn't it? But there's some stuff you've got to get. In between the person putting that thing in the cart and giving you their money, there's some stuff in between. Right. And so making that process as quick as possible is really, really important. The next important thing is making sure that customer receives the thing they bought, right? So, not just making sure that you've allowed them to check out quickly, but that you've captured the right amount of information so they can get their delivery. And then the third really important thing is being able to communicate with that customer during that process, because if there are any problems or if they just want an update, it's really important to make sure that you can do that. So that's what our app does. We help customers check out quickly, fill out all of that information accurately, and speed up that process by 80%. How does that compare to something like Google? Well, Google is a fantastic, everyone knows Google, right? They're fantastic. Right. They're synonymous with search. They've become a verb. You've made it when your brand is a verb. Right. But they don't specialize in address data. Okay, it's like one of their side projects, and they're good at it, and it's a great tool, but it's sort of an offshoot of their mapping API. So what they're really, really good at is place information. They have a load of place information. What they're not so good at, or what they don't focus on as much, is personal information, knowing where a person is, identifying that this is where the person needs to be and this is where you need to deliver to. And the reason they haven't done that is because it takes a lot of work, but that's our bread and butter. That's what we've been doing for over 20 years. And we have a whole team of people dedicated to making sure that we've got the most granular, most accurate, and the biggest breadth of address personal data so that we can get those deliveries through to the right person on the first time versus, perhaps not being sure that that's going to happen.
What's interesting about, I find a lot of brands are trying to expand, usually American brands that I deal with mostly, they're trying to expand into Canada. They have some separate challenges of things like the cross-border issues of duty and tax compliance. Either you show it in cart or you tell the client on the end, they say, well, you're responsible for the duty and the brokerage and the whole thing, which is very poor from a conversion perspective for sure. And that's where Shopify Markets or Markets Pro came in. And they, really have now connected with Shopify. And so I think that part of it works. But what do you see on your side of it about, here's some of the challenges of international commerce as an American brand shipping to Canada or shipping to Australia or anywhere in Europe? Like, how does your solution actually enhance that overall customer experience? I know you talk about, hey, it has better autocomplete. It has, a better addressability. There's a lot of benefits in the Loqate solution, but I just want to know from an international perspective how it actually helps a business.
That's a great question. So I think that one of the biggest challenges when you come to cross-border, especially, I think, in America going into Canada, there's a similar kind of culture there. But even still, there are challenges. There's different languages in Canada. There's certain parts of it are in French.
Yeah.
But when you look in Europe, it's even bigger because you've got loads and loads of different countries. They all speak different. They're all very close to each other. Many of them are bordering each other, but they have different languages, different culture, different payment models. So the biggest challenge, actually, I think, is personalizing that journey for those individual customers. And if you can get that right, if you can get a really personalized journey for those customers, you can see huge conversion rate improvements because, people want to buy from a website that looks like it's local to them. And that's the challenge, isn't it? When you're shopping, when you have an international and a cross-border customer base, how do you make sure you're giving the exact same experience to every customer, no matter where they're coming from? And we help with that because our tool, our capture address lookup, can be personalized. So if a customer's coming from Germany, it will display the results with the German character sets. It will say, rather than start typing, it will say that in German, and it presents the address in the local format. So in Germany, for example, the house number comes at the end of the street rather than the beginning.
Right.
So there's little nuances like that in each country that, when a user in that country sees their address, sees the tool working natively like they would expect, makes them feel more connected, makes them feel more part of the journey. And we know that increases conversion rates.
It's interesting, while you were speaking, I went to Sephora.com and added something to cart, attempted to check out. So I put my first and last name, phone number, and email address. The next thing it comes up is under street address. And so I typed in the start of my address, which was 7891. And then a drop down instantly appeared. And then I put my street, which is 211. And now instantly there's 3 options now, but I see where mine is. It's quite intelligent where it says, okay, 7891 211 Street. Great. And then it has an arrow now, and so when upon hover, when I'm clicking on it, then it has all of the house numbers. So 1-7891 or 2-. So it was an easy scroll for me to go down to find my house number and select it. Mm-hmm. And the nice thing about it is that I believe it's in the right format that I know from a deliverability perspective makes a lot of sense. So instead of it being, let's say 21 7891 211 Street, and then the city, Sephora and through your platform has just said, no, the street address is 7891 211 Street, but then there's a door buzzer. Is it a building code? Is it an apartment number? Is it a house number? And there's a separate field for that. And I think a lot of brands don't do it correctly like this, where that field needs to be populated correctly, not as a hyphenated kind of street address. So kudos to kind of what's happening here. So.
Yeah, and that's really important. And just for Canada, for example, we partner with Canada Post, right. So we get the data from the source, and we're one of the only address verification suppliers who have that kind of partnership with them. So it is important. And there's other parts of information that from Google, again going back to how we compare ourselves to Google, they don't have that sort of granularity. So in a lot of countries, they wouldn't have sort of the premises or the sub-premises level data, which is really important, especially in more built-up areas. Lots and lots of people live in apartments, and Google doesn't have that information. So the level of granularity that you can get from an address is actually really important.
It's lovely. I'd like to pivot over to a case study or some kind of a success story, so to speak, because I think I get motivated. Some of my listeners, we get motivated to hear people saying, hey, here's what my life was by using kind of the baked-in solution with Shopify, which is great. It's a really good starting point. Number one, you choose the right platform, so that's a good starting point for your business. The second part is that, are there some incrementality of improvements somewhere in the checkout flow and deliverability? And the answer is yes. And so I kind of creeped on the Loqate's website too. I know there are quite a few case studies, but is there any one that's kind of merit that you could kind of talk about publicly and saying, hey, here's what their life was before Loqate. They clearly had a challenge. They decided to use the solution. And then what does the implementation and the final result for them look like on the other side?
Absolutely. The one that comes to mind most readily is a company in the UK, and they're international as well. They've actually done a fantastic job with the personalization journey, called Lounge Underwear. And Lounge are a great story for two reasons, actually. For one, like I said, they went down the hyper-personalization route, which is really, really interesting because their sort of background is that during COVID, when everyone was in lockdown, they saw a huge jump in business because everyone was trying to buy loungewear, weren't they? So, massive increases. And then lockdowns stop and, things drop off. But like all businesses, they were tasked with continuing that upward trajectory of growth. So they went down the hyper-personalization route, which was to make sure that they used to have one website that covered every territory.
Right.
And they picked out 5 of their key territories, and they made a different website for each one with different photographs, different text, different language and tone of language, different checkout models. And they saw a 200% increase in conversion rate off the back of that. And part of that was due to the address lookup tool. Like I said, we have a personalized model in that. But the other thing that they have seen, which was really interesting to me, was that they were using Google as their checkout autocomplete in Shopify. Mm-hmm. And they saw that, especially in some of these markets in Europe, 40% of the delivery addresses that were being captured via Google were missing vital parts of the address. Mm. And they were having to spend hundreds of thousands of pounds to fix that. Because, like I said, in certain countries, the house number's at the end of the address line.
Right.
If you're truncating the address, you could be missing out the entire house number. So there were lots of issues they were having like that. And I'm happy to say that by using the Loqate solution, Capture, they've fixed all of those problems.
Yeah, I actually went to lounge.com to take a look. And you're right, mine IP redirects to ca.lounge.com. So they clearly have located a couple, as you said, 5 different markets where, I guess the lounge.com would be their American market. But with my IP detection being in Canada, it just instantly redirected me to that. And I think that makes sense. I love the localized experience in Canadian dollars. Mm-hmm. And I've also gone through the checkout flow and it was same kind of like lovely, seamless autocomplete that you would expect. But, the thing was that it's because it's powered by Loqate made it so good. And so, yeah, that's amazing that they've had such an amazing lift by implementing that. Hopefully that's very inspirational for those that are listening.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about GDPR because I think, and CCPA here in North America, but it's just like, I think privacy policies and kind of like access to this kind of customer data. And I know, it's just one of these topics, sometimes it's in the elephant in the room, so to speak. So I just would love to hear from your perspective, like how Loqate is able to balance, I guess, the need, so to speak, for accurate customer data, but then also on the flip side, this whole data protection kind of regulations that are going on. These are really important kind of legal conversations that I think brands want to hear it from you about, like, well, what are you doing about it? And then how does the process and the systems work to be compliant to GDPR and CCPA?
It is a really important subject and we take it very, very seriously. So I mentioned at the top of the podcast that Loqate is part of a company called GB right. Group.
Right.
GB Group focus on fraud and data intelligence and we have a whole team who look after compliance and GDPR. We're actually a data controller when it comes to GDPR because we work with a lot of customer data, but also because we work with a lot of government agencies, and there's a lot of reason why we need to make sure that our processes are all completely watertight. When it comes to Loqate, a lot of the data that we capture isn't actually personal information. The address on its own isn't personal information because you need to have multiple pieces of data before you can tie it together. But from our side, there's lots of rules and processes we have in place to make sure that any data that is coming through that we store is anonymized and completely sort of watertight when it comes to from a data protection point of view. Right. So the only piece of information that we really store, and it's for a limited time, it's only 30 days, is the IP address. And we only do that because for security reasons, so that you can tie down the number of lookups per IP and things like that. Right. But we delete that after 30 days because we don't need it for any longer than that. We want to ensure that we're going beyond really what's necessary in terms of making sure that all of this information is secure. Everything else we don't store, so we purely just process the data. And from the customer's point of view, it's important because, especially I'm more familiar with GDPR than CCPA, but right. I think that there's a lot of it is very similar. There's a requirement actually for retailers to make sure that the data that they're capturing on their customers is accurate and up to date. So we help with that. But it's also important to make sure that, when you're doing deliveries and you're storing information about your customers, that you have got the right information so you can contact them in case you need to for certain, requirements in GDPR as well. So we help a lot of customers with that. And we do a lot of what we call batch processing as well, where customers can just send us their data and we can clean it up. And again, there are sort of parts of those regulations where that's necessary. So it's something we take very, very seriously. We've got a whole team of people who are far more sort of clued up on, exactly what we do and why we do it. But it's something we do take very, very seriously.
Okay. That's lovely. Thanks for sharing that. I want to talk a bit about the holiday season. BFCM is on a lot of people's mind. It seems like once Labor Day hits in North America, all of a sudden, everyone's done their summer holidays and kids are back to school. And then brand marketers are now thinking about, well, what are we doing for the Q4 season? We've got to think about, Black Friday, Cyber Monday. We have to think about the share of wallet for customers through the holiday season. And I know you have a Shopify app that connects to a Shopify store. I guess that's one method of setting up the solution. There's probably a manual method of going into the code base and auto-injecting a private app. And so I don't get into too much of the technicalities of kind of like what the process looks like to onboard, but I just would love to understand a little bit about it. And I'd like to understand a little bit about, is now the right time to want to install a solution like this right now? Like, because we are in Q4 right now. This is going to be like, I hate to say make or break, but there's going to be a lot of buyers that are really starting to ramp up. Certainly by the end of this month, we're in September right now, but certainly by October, things are really starting to hop so knowing that where there's incremental traffic, there's incremental sales, is this the right time or should we wait to the new year? And if it is the right time, then what's the process for a Shopify brand? Is it the app? Is it customer success and directly installing the solution in the code base? I just would love to understand what kind of next steps would be.
Yeah, absolutely. So the simple answer to that question is yes. Now is absolutely the best time to do it because it's really, really easy. Okay. And it's going to make sure that going through peak, going through that period where you're getting, loads and loads of, hopefully lots of new customers onboarding, that you're capturing that data correctly. And actually also speeding up that process for them because the quicker the onboarding and the checkout journey is, the more likely they are to convert. So no time is better than now to get that installed. How do you install it? It is an app, because we have an app now launched on the Shopify store. It's relatively new. Right. We've developed it as part of the extensibility update. Okay. So it's completely native, easy to install, plug and play. You need an account with us, so you'd set up an account, but it's all sort of part of that setting up the app journey. Right. So it's very, very easy. But outside of that, we do also have an API-based platform. So, you can install our tools into any website actually, or any application, apps, CRM systems, back-end systems, till systems but it goes into any system because it's an API. It's very flexible. And anywhere where you're capturing customer data or any address data, it would benefit from it being quicker and more accurate.
When you mentioned about extensibility, so it kind of implies that you likely need to be on the Shopify Plus side of the business versus maybe the Shopify Core plans?
Yeah, so we do have customers who use us in Core as well.
Okay.
And with that, you just install it sort of via the normal JavaScript tag that we have.
Okay.
So that's super easy.
Okay.
And lots and lots of our customers used us that way before the change.
Right.
But obviously with the change to extensibility, you have to do it via an app now.
Yeah.
So we have that app in place.
Yeah, and I see a lot of brands now using the one-page checkout. They're finding conversion lift. That's been a big ask for a lot of brands over the years because Adobe was using it, or Magento and stuff like that over the years, where they would allow one page to enter all the information and boom, checkout, instead of this multi-step checkout flow, which some people still have. A lot of people have migrated to the one-page checkout that just kind of works dynamically, but it's part of this extensibility that's out there now. But this is good. It's good that you can add the app and or just kind of or just inject it through a JavaScript code, so it's not too difficult. How does AI fit into all of this? It's kind of like, it seems to be the flavor of the year for this podcast. There's so many applications for using these large language models now, from a customer service perspective, from a personalization perspective. There's so many different ways of using AI. That you could name any industry, and I think it's being upended by the use of AI. Is this the same with Loqate? And then how are you using AI to enhance things overall with the customer experience and address verifications and all this stuff? I'd just like to understand more.
Yeah, so personally, I'm a huge fan of AI. I know some people are a bit, skeptical or even sort of slightly afraid of it. But yeah. I think, I'm all for the AI overlords taking over one day. But I think for Loqate, it's an interesting question. We do use AI and machine learning.
Okay.
And the process we use that in is, without getting too technical, it's with the parsing of address data. So I was talking earlier about how, as you go into sort of some of these hard to address countries, getting a single source of truth for the data is really tough. What we've been doing, and we're the only ones who do this, and this is, one of the reasons why our data is as good as it is because what we're able to do, and AI and machine learning helps us do this, but we also have a team of humans doing this as well, is we'll take data from multiple different sources and we can sew it all together into a single golden record. So, for example, you may get one data source which is really, really good for sub-premises data, but isn't so good for cities and street names. And then there's another data source which is brilliant for cities and street names, but doesn't have any sub-premises data. So historically, you'd have to pick whichever one of those data sets kind of had the best overall coverage, but you were always missing something. With our technology, we call this process PDH, which stands for persistent data hierarchy. We're able to take multiple different data sets and just take the best bits of them all and sew it all together, which has massively increased our coverage. In some countries, it's sort of increased it by 80% more addresses. Recently, we were able to sort of launch, I think it was about 16 million new apartment blocks in Spain. This is a really, really powerful process. And like I said, we do have a team of amazing people who are doing this because it does still require human intervention. But what AI and machine learning is doing is helping us to just fill the gaps a little bit, which is really, really cool. So that's, I guess, where we're using it so far. We're not taking it into any of the front end of the product at the moment, although I do have some ideas on, how that eventually could work.
Right.
But I think at the moment we're really focusing on that core problem, which is how do you get really, really good quality address data for every country in the world?
Yeah, I think I ran it through kind of before recording. I ran that question through Perplexities. I was just curious to do some research on that. And then one of the one of the comments that came up and then the language is called AI parsing, and the parsing of the data, meaning, there's multiple sources of things, and then cross-referencing. That's where you're using the power of the machine and the AI models to look at all this data, and then combining that together, and graphing it and then re-updating it accordingly with like improving the address matching and the verification process. Is so interesting that that's out there.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's fascinating.
It's really, really fascinating. So we're getting kind of near the end of the show for today, but like, is there any advice that you would give to entrepreneurs really that are thinking about, this Q4 season, they're thinking about next year, they're considering kind of some expansion, international expansion. And, there clearly are challenges. You've articulated them perfectly that every country in the world typically has their nuances about that. And so to mitigate a lot of those kind of international risks, what sort of advice would you give a brand as it relates to which countries they should likely go to, and then how they gradually start using the Loqate solution, and how that could probably help them as they expand into those markets?
Yeah. So when talking to our customers, our retailers, what they tend to start doing at the beginning of a journey like that is to go for the countries that, share a common language, share a kind of common culture. So,
right.
UK, Canada, America, Australia. Once you start branching out into territories that do have different cultures, do have different languages and addressing systems, then I think that, like I said, the most important thing really is that personalization piece, and getting to know those countries as well as you can. Focus on, look at where your customers are coming from, or where the potential customers are coming from. Focus on some of those top markets and really hyper personalize your offering and your website to those people, because you'd be surprised, how much of a difference that can make. Actually, like I said, with Lounge, they saw a 200% conversion rate improvement by hyper personalizing and really, just giving people a very, very personalized process. So that's one piece of advice I would give. But the other, for sort of going into the holiday season, is don't ignore the data. I think a lot of people think that they can either have a really fast and good checkout, or they can collect lots of data, but they can't have both. But actually, with a tool like Loqate, you can have both. You can have really, really accurate, important, top-tier, first-party data as well, which is really important these days with, the demise of cookies. You can get that data as accurate and as standardized and as validated as possible, while actually speeding up the checkout process as well. So it's like having your cake and eating it.
Yeah, it's kind of like the old SEO conversation and the conversion rate lift. They talk about the speed of the website. First of all, to come up in organic search, just physically having the website quickly is definitely a ranking factor, but a conversion factor too upon checkout is definitely how easy it is to navigate the site and add to cart and check out. And this is a piece of technology, what Loqate can do to speed up the checkout process by having an accurate address ready to go and have a drop down and say, yeah, that's my address. Exactly what I did when I went to Sephora. No, that's my address. Click, boom, it auto-populated everything into the checkout flow. And they actually have a one-page checkout too, so it made it even smoother. And then just next thing was shipping, same. And then credit card information, boom, that added instantly too, because I use another tool like OnePass. And then so that automatically entered in, and then boom, I was able to check out. So it's quite interesting. It's pretty cool that you have this kind of opportunity available. I think I think about Q4. It's so easy now, either through the Shopify app or through auto-injected JavaScript. I think it's a simple, straightforward process, and it's affordable. I know we kind of talked offline before recording, but it's just like, you really don't necessarily have a sweet spot. Like you can definitely help the early stage brands. And so can we talk a little bit about that, about where you kind of fit, and then how the pricing model starts and kind of where it heads to in the mid-market to enterprise?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got over 20,000 customers now using the software. And when we first started out, we were a tiny startup. I was the 9th employee. We had a very robust self-serve platform, and we grew a lot in those early days because we had a really affordable, really accessible solution that, retailers could start from $50 and get up and running, and they may only spend $50 in that year, whereas the alternative was thousands and thousands of dollars and lots of manual work. As a SaaS platform, we could offer it at a much easier model, and we still have that model, and we still have loads of customers on that model. So you can go to Loqate.com and self-serve from $50 and get up and running in literally. I was doing a demo to some of my colleagues yesterday or the day before. You can get it up and running in 5 minutes and start benefiting from really, really good quality customer data, from a very affordable model. But with many SaaS platforms and SaaS models, the more you buy, the cheaper it is. We have lots of tiers, and we also have an enterprise model as well. We have some, as you said at the beginning, some really, really large customers using us. Right. And so we have enterprise models that work for them as well. We have a fantastic customer success team who look after our customers. But we also have a self-serve platform, which is suitable for some customers who just want to plug and play. Right.
Yeah, this is lovely. I know, like I said, I also said at the top of the show is that I've been recommending Loqate, and it's taken me 6.5 years to finally have you on the show. I've been recommending it forever, and I'm glad we're able to record today and actually tell the real story about why people need this. It's clear that some large brands have made decisions to vet solutions that are out there, and they have chosen Loqate. It's clearly working for the biggest, top 100 in the world that are using the solution, but then you're still very open because of the SaaS self-serve model that you're able to support the early stage brands, just to make sure, because I think at the end of the day, the customer experience and reduction of fraud, accuracy of shipping information, all these things is all part of the customer experience, which also then kind of tacks on top of the loyalty side, building raving fans, and just the expectation of this product coming quickly to the right address as fast as possible. And I think that's kind of what the whole solution does. So I just wanted to thank you, number one, for coming on the show today. I appreciate your transparent sharing. What do you believe some of the next steps are? I guess would be to go and check out the website, and then maybe get a demo, I guess would be the next steps.
Yeah, absolutely. We're on the Shopify App Store, so you can find us on there, Loqate with a Q. We check out our website as well. We've got loads of case studies. We're happy to talk you through any questions you may have if you want to come and have a look at it. You can have a free trial, no problem at all. So yeah, we're super flexible.
Lovely. Well, Alex, once again, thank you all the way from the UK. Thank you so much for recording today. Much appreciated. And I wish you continued success in this market. And cheers to you and to Loqate.
Thanks, Steve. And thanks for having me on.
All right. Take care. Well, that's it for today's episode. I'd like to thank you personally for being a loyal listener of eCommerce Fastlane. It's my hope that this podcast is offering you a ton of value through growth strategies, tactics, and exclusive insider tips on the best Shopify apps and marketing platforms, all with my personal goal to help you build, manage, grow, and scale a successful and thriving company powered by Shopify. Thanks for investing some time today and listening to the show. I'm so proud and excited that you have a growth mindset and are a constant learner. I truly appreciate you and your entrepreneurial journey. Enjoy the rest of the week and keep thriving with Shopify.